it's Lucy here. Today at A&J Education we're going to be talking about studying history at university. So you're trying to decide which subject you should study at university and you're thinking about history. Most universities in the UK offer history as an option, and you'll also probably find they'll also offer it as a joint option. It's often combined with English or a modern foreign language, sometimes even politics or economics. So there are almost endless options for you available if you really enjoy history and you're thinking about studying it at a higher level. So what sort of things do you need to be aware of? Firstly, that you should really look at the courses to try and narrow down which of these almost endless options is the right one for you. Whilst lots of universities offer history as a course, the way they teach it and the particular areas of history that are covered can be vastly different. Because, history, there are over thousands of years of history that you can study across the globe. So you need to think about, does the University of York offer the particular areas of history that are interesting to me? Or would I actually hate the sort of history that I'd have to study whilst I'm there? These are the really important things you want to be thinking about when you're trying to decide which of these many courses you're going to apply to. It's also worth thinking about, what on earth can a history degree do for me? Many people are going to university with the view that it's going to help them get a job in the future. I know many people at first, when I said I'm going to study history, they were like, so you'll be a teacher? And they couldn't really think about what other options there were available. Today, you can get almost anywhere with a history degree. You certainly can't become a scientist without doing another degree on top of it, but the options available to you are really varied. You can become a teacher or continue down the academic path and go on to do a master's, PhD, etc. if that interests you. You could also become a banker or a consultant, or you could be working in a gallery. There are so many options, and many people think that the skills you learn studying history, such as how to analyse things, how to weigh up evidence, how to write a convincing argument, how to also speak articulately, they're really valuable skills for your future. And then what else you need to be aware of is the process. Generally speaking, the requirements for history are quite similar. Unless you're applying to Oxford or Cambridge, it's very unlikely you'll need to do anything else on top of it. If you're applying to those two, it's quite common that you'll be asked to send in work or do an entrance test. Otherwise, it's advisable but often not actually required that you do history as part of your A-level subjects, or if you're doing the IB or Scottish Highers or whatever, it's often very highly recommended that you're studying history but not essential. Other than that, they're generally very flexible. For instance, I studied history, English literature, then maths was my other A-level, and I did chemistry AS. So pretty varied, and you'll find that a science subject can be very helpful because it's making you think logically. Sometimes it is important to do maths. Maybe, for instance, you really like economic history, so that could be really useful for you. Again, a modern foreign language would also be really useful because when you get to study at a higher level, perhaps for an extended essay or your thesis, you could be reading sources in the original language, which not everyone is able to do. So again, in terms of what sort of preparation you need to do, pick your subjects wisely, but it's not too important because history, it's pretty broad what subjects can be useful. You also want to try and do some sort of work experience or extracurriculars around history to put in your personal statement. So most importantly, read around the subject, read lots of history books, watch documentaries. If there's an opportunity for you to say, do a tour guide or volunteer at a historic house, anything like that would be really useful. Maybe you can tutor some younger students, write an extra paper outside of your schoolwork. History is a very popular course, so you want to make sure that you're not just kind of taking the option of, I kind of liked this subject at school, I think I'll also enjoy it at university. You want to show to your admissions officers that you have actually thought this through a little bit. So I think they're kind of the main points covered. The other thing to be aware of is think also a little bit maybe about the resources of the university when you're studying. History is a very book-heavy course, and it's like boring and you might not really think about it until you're there, but how large the library is, how many libraries there are, whether you have 200 people competing over the same 5 textbooks every week, like that's a kind of boring thing to be thinking of when you're like getting excited about applying to university, but trust me, it's actually really important. And when you actually get there and you're having to do the work, having all these resources is incredibly helpful for a humanities degree. I was really lucky in the fact that I had a 24/7 college library that often had the subjects and the books that I needed, but then there were other libraries around that I could also access. So it was very, very rare that I was having to do the fighting over book situation. But I know lots of other people who were at my university, but perhaps in a college that didn't have such great resources, or at another university which also had slightly inadequate resources. There were definitely situations where it's like, right, book list comes out, got to be at the library then to be the first one to take this book out. So think a little bit about that as well. And lastly, maybe you want to be in a historic town. If you're a history geek like me, it's definitely interesting being somewhere where you can walk down the streets and think, oh, this is where this happened, and see the history around you rather than a super modern town. But that's just personal preference. And in England, you're not really lacking in old towns and cities. So I think that's probably a general overview. Applying to history isn't super complicated. Generally, people really like the subject. It can lead you to a lot of different career paths, and there's a lot of variety often available. But do check what sort of history you're going to have to study, because, for instance, I absolutely hate modern political economic history, and sometimes universities really like that stuff. So just have a look into the courses so that you can figure out which one would be right for you. If you do have any questions, as always, please comment below. Goodbye for now. Hope you enjoyed our videos. You can click here for more, and you can click right here to subscribe.